Ladies and gents, welcome back. The big story this morning is Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader and likely shoe-in as next Prime Minister of Canada, a conspiracy theorist. Now, the mainstream media came out in lockstep to try to prove this point, almost proving his point in the process. Here we have it from CBC News. Poilievre, Conservative Party embracing language of mainstream conspiracy theories. The rest of them all following suit, almost giving the appearance of some sort of conspiracy amongst the mainstream media to run this story. Nonetheless, petrified COVID parent here showing this one. Canadian news outlets are unbiased, uncoordinated, and completely independent, all running the exact same headline. Pierre's Conservative Party embracing language of mainstream media conspiracy theories. Now, this is all going around the idea of, well, the World Economic Forum and how much influence they're peddling here in Canada. As well, a lot of people are upset with the fact that there is so much tie with the World Economic Forum and governments around the world. And this isn't just the words of, conspiracy theorists online. These are actually the words of the World Economic Forum leader himself, as he said in this clip here.
When I mention now names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. But what we are very proud of now, the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
So they can't run a soundboard, but they want to run the world. You heard all the audio disruption there, but this is out of the words, right out of the mouth of the man himself. We've penetrated the cabinets, not just a lobby group anymore, and people are upset with that because, well, we're supposed to have a democratic institution here where these are representatives of the people, not representatives of these lobby groups or whatever you want to call what the World Economic Forum does there. Conservative leader Poilievre has been hitting the summer barbecue circuit with ramped up rhetoric around debunked claim that the World Economic Forum is attempting to impose its agenda on sovereign governments. Well, how is that a debunked claim? I just showed you the clip of him saying that's what they're doing. It is, some experts suggest, another sign that some conspiracy theories are moving from the fringes of the internet to mainstream thinking as people distrust of government grows. Well, why do they distrust the government? Well, because they've been doing such a bang-up job at representing our own people here in the country. No. They're going along with these agendas and they're pushing it and imposing their will on the country here. And this is where we're at with this. Poilievre peddled the World Economic Forum control claims during the Conservative leadership race in 2022, and it has emerged again as a regular talking point following the federal by-election in South Manitoba. But this is what do you do with this except look at the actual facts? And here's Viva Fry pointing out the actual facts. Daily reminders, CBC News. It's not a conspiracy theory, you gaslighting liars. Chrystia Freeland, who is the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, number 2 under Justin Trudeau, is on the World Economic Board of Trustees. She's a member of the Board of Trustees. It's right there on the website under her profile saying she is a member of the Forum's Board of Trustees. You can't make this up. Trudeau and Jugmeat have wonderfully flattering bios on the World Economic Forum website as well. And you can go and check that out for yourself. The links are there. It's very obvious that this is where they are. And a lot of people are concerned about these things. The article also goes on to talk about the pandemic as a trigger, saying, people distrust what the government did during the pandemic, and rightfully so. It ruined a lot of lives. It ruined people's businesses. It ruined relationships with people all over the country. And yes, it was a terrible, terrible thing that the government did in its implementation of those things. And when you hear stuff like Justin Trudeau saying that that's how he's gonna use this, what they learned from that, as a method of reaching, taking care of all these other problems around Canada, people are starting to see, well, what it is worth. And this is right out of the mouth of the man himself.
What we learned from this COVID crisis, we will be applying to the climate crisis, to the housing crisis, to reconciliation, to making sure that everyone has good jobs and careers that carry them through and create opportunities for their kids. What we
Yeah, well, that doesn't sound very good to a lot of Canadians. People not wanting to bring that stuff forward. What are you talking about? Lockdowns, government control, usurping powers that were never granted to the federal government, going outside of the boundaries of passing laws through legislative process and just using dictates to force your will on the Canadian public. I'm not sure what he's trying to get at in this statement, but it definitely sounds like that to the average listener that is listening to the words he has to say. Now, Lion Advocacy on Twitter says this is the most shameful, malicious piece to come out of CBC News in ages. Well, and all the other agencies running this as well. World Economic Forum influence over Canadian ministers is not a conspiracy theory. It's a legit concern that needs to be recognized, especially when the Canadian finance minister sits as a WEF trustee. And that's absolutely the case. Now, the news media and government officials are no strangers to peddling their own conspiracy theories as well. And this is a really good clip from the amazing Zoltan on Twitter here, pointing out many cases of just this exactly.
I don't know if it's far-fetched to ask, but there is concern that Russian actors could be continuing to fuel things as this protest grows, but perhaps even instigating it from the outset.
How much vitriol do we have to see of honk honk, which is an acronym for Hail Hitler?
Okay, yeah, conspiracy theories. I'll leave the whole video in the link down below. He goes over many of the times that conspiracy theories were peddled by the media and the government alike in that whole scenario surrounding the Freedom Convoy. Now, Andy Lee on Twitter pointing out, surprisingly, one of the expert sources from the article in there, just used in this article, which calls Conservative Party members conspiracy theorists, is a federal grant recipient and a Liberal Party donor. Every time we keep seeing this all the time. And this is, again, to CTV News that was peddling the same story. Now, this is Trudeau again talking about how, well, people are using misinformation and disinformation.
Because a democracy only works if citizens are engaged, informed, and more or less working from the same agreed fact base. And that's what's challenging. I'll give an applaud to that one. There are increasingly high levels of misinformation and disinformation. And we all know people who went down internet rabbit holes around the pandemic and have yet to come out of it. It's easier and easier to get swept up by compelling, simple, sharp, short answers that are unfortunately invariably wrong. I'll tell you a secret. If there was a super easy, simple question or answer to any of the really tough questions they would have had, people would have figured it out already.
Maybe they have figured it out, Trudeau. Maybe they have figured it out. And maybe people are really upset about, well, the influence that's being peddled on the cabinet, the cabinet that's been penetrated, from the words of Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum. Brian Lilly saying, the poll numbers have been good for Pierre Poilievre for a while now. It's a clear trend of him leading in almost every region in the country. The latest campaign comes right at the right time. Now, this is interesting that they're pushing all of this stuff about Pierre Poilievre being a conspiracy theorist right as his popularity is coming up. It's almost as if the mainstream media is in lockstep with the Liberal Party to, well, aid them in all of this moving forward. Now, here are some of the polls as recent as yesterday. The latest on 338 Canada. The Conservatives currently 1 seat off from a majority in the latest projection. So this is to say that if there was an election tomorrow, these would be the results, or likely would be the results. But this was just last week. They were showing a majority for the Conservatives. And this is a growing popularity, and it's likely because, not because of conspiracy theories, but largely because Canadians are getting fed up with the way things are going in this country, and it's really, really coming down to that. There's a massive shortfall when it comes to, well, just the quality of life in Canada, whether it's the economy or it's the healthcare system. People are just upset, and they just don't believe that the Liberals are doing a good job, and they want to see some sort of change. And the Conservatives are promising, well, what they're doing with Pierre Poilievre is just saying what Canadians are actually thinking. And, well, this is one Canadian that came back who was not living in Canada, and she came back and to say this.
I gotta be honest, Canada is so disappointing now. It's a completely different place. I moved away about 2 years ago. I've been living in the US for 2 years, but I come back to Canada quite often. And I've noticed, or I should say I've made a lot of observations of just how it continues to keep going downhill. For starters, the cost of living in Canada is absolutely insane. I don't understand how they get away with it. I saw a house not too far from mine that was a piece of garbage. It was so bad. It was old, falling apart. It was horrible. And out of curiosity, I looked up how much it was selling for. $350,000.
We're all kind of used to this at this point here in Canada, but it's always refreshing to have a fellow Canadian come back after years of not living in the country and point out a lot of these things. She goes on to talk about the medical system. She goes on to talk about a number of issues. I'll leave a link in the description down below so you can go check out the video in its entirety. But she ends the video on this note.
And I am so glad that I moved away and I don't have to live here, because I don't know how people do it anymore. And it's so sad because I was born and raised here. I've always been such a proud Canadian, and there's just nothing to be proud of anymore.
Very, very sad to hear that from this individual, but this is the way a lot of Canadians are feeling these days. But I want to leave this one to you guys. Leave this comment, leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about this conspiracy theory. Do you think the next Prime Minister of Canada, Pierre Poilievre, is a conspiracy theorist, or do you think he's just actually telling the truth about the influence that's being peddled behind the scenes and in, you know, dark rooms or penetrating cabinets or whatever, what have you, that's peddling the influence to have our politicians go against the will of the population to implement whatever things that they're implementing on our country? Anyway, leave a comment in the comment section down below, and we'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.